I think we're ready to start. We're not going to start our town council meeting just yet. Do that first. We have a special presentation before our council meeting starts. Mr. Bradley is going to. Mr. Bradley, me? Yes. We know all about zoning.
Welcome. We're here to celebrate the 2022 Citizen of the Year. And I want to say I'm honored to be making the presentation on behalf of Jake Daniele and Chip Lawrence, who are members with me on the committee that makes an initial selection for the council. So I have prepared some remarks. Some of you will find them too long. Some of you won't. One of you won't. But before I start, I wanted to say that each year the council gives the Citizen of the Year award to a Freeport resident who has made a substantial contribution to the well-being of our residents and the reputation of our town, and has led to measurable improvement in the circumstances of a significant number of our townspeople. That's the standard we use. By any measure, thank you, Tom. By any measure, 2022 was a remarkable year. COVID subsided and left us working online and by Zoom. Freeport's downtown vision redefined the role of our downtown for the rest of Freeport and clarified connections between our residents and our visitors. The town made major efforts to increase scarce housing as property values soared. Local businesses like LL Bean, Desert of Maine, and Wolfneck Farm invested millions of dollars in their operation, hired hundreds of people, and gave us assets throughout the town to visit. So did the local breweries, who opened a beer trail along Route 1 corridor from South Freeport Road to the downtown, and local cultural organizations that made important contributions to the art and cultural life of our community. Notably, the Freeport Historical Society, who made a multi-million-dollar expansion of its centrally located site on Main Street, across the street from the Meeting House Arts, which renovated the historic First Parish Congregational Church to create a modern art gallery, a music, and a stage venue. At the same time, the Freeport Sewer District completed $19 million worth of plans to renovate and expand its sewer plant in South Freeport to serve those residents and to protect the water quality for our clamming and other marine business interests in Harrisicot Harbor. Another resident group, the High School Scholarship Fund, established $1 million scholarship fund for graduating RSU 5 seniors. New initiatives like these were added to the already impressive community efforts that are being conducted by long-term Freeport organizations. Freeport Community Services added new leaders to its impressive list of community support efforts. The Rotary Club and Freeport Chamber continued their valuable contributions in support of the town, as did the many town committees I could and should name. Oh, sorry? What? I'm too long? 3 minutes up? Forget about it. As did the many town committees I could and should name, who worked tirelessly to keep Freeport vibrant. The point I'm making is that Freeport is a caring, committed, and consuming town where hundreds of residents work tirelessly towards contributions all these organizations make every day. Many of these people are worthy of the award we're giving tonight. It wasn't easy to choose the just one person that we are conferring this award on. This year, the Freeport Citizen of the Year is Kathleen Sullivan. I'm not done. I'm just getting going.
Oh, God, an Irishman.
My wild Irishman. Kathleen is a professional therapist, a wife, a mother, a grandmother who has lived and worked in our town for more than 45 years. During this time, she's played a steady and effective role to improve the quality of life in Freeport and to encourage others to engage in actions that have measurably improved the lives of our residents. In 1988, she organized a group of young students she called CAKE, concerned about kids' environment, which successfully advocated for the elimination of styrofoam from the town's retail packaging stream. She is a talented writer and poet who wrote a blog during COVID that described the anxiety and isolation the pandemic produced to provide comfort and encouragement to those struggling to cope. She has collaborated with local artists and residents to create an anthology of Maine voices on climate crisis to increase the awareness of the impacts of global warming. Right?
Right.
During 2022, she was the leader and voice of an organization called Freeport Climate Action, now Freeport Can, which has taken significant steps to address the threat of global warming and given hundreds of our residents the information they need to address climate change. Kathleen Sullivan is a living, breathing, thinking, wake-up call for the rest of us. Under her leadership, Freeport Can developed a partnership with Mount Desert Climate to Thrive, to convince people of the reality of rising temperatures. They developed a farmer's market at Main and West Street. They organized Electrify Freeport, a conference which introduced residents to the personal choices they have to address climate change. They promoted increased use of the breeze by subsidizing the cost of tickets to ride the bus to Portland. They worked with the town's sustainability committee to hire a sustainability coordinator for the towns of Freeport and Yarmouth. They also successfully advocated for the use of Freeport's ARPA funds to assist low and middle income residents to acquire electric alternatives to fossil fuel through purchase of heat pumps, cars, EV chargers, and other appliances. Kathleen will be the first to tell you she did not accomplish all of this by herself, that many others played important roles that were critical to the efforts of Freeport Can. And undoubtedly, that's true. Rarely does any Citizen of the Year achieve significant success alone. Like Kathleen, they are influencers, activists, and passionate supporters of their projects. Like her, they wake us up, they take action, they get things done. Kathleen is fearless, fierce, and passionate in her efforts to help our community cope with the climate. Her passion persuades the rest of us to pay attention. Her fierce commitment convinces us to join her in her efforts. Kathleen Sullivan has made a long and remarkable contribution to the quality of our life in town, and for all she has and will continue to do, we name her Freeport's 2022 Citizen of the Year.
Can I move that microphone? No. I won't touch that microphone. I'll just have to breathe. I'll try not to faint. Thank you. Where should I start? I'll be very brief. But the first thing I want to do is I wish that my family was here, my family of origin, because they really only wanted me to sit down and be quiet. And all I'd ever hear is, if you would just be quiet, everything would be okay. So I feel quite vindicated right now. But mostly I want to thank everybody in this room, and I want to thank the town council for recognizing how important this cause is that we're working for. You didn't have to be, it takes a lot of courage to recognize where we are right now with the planet and with the climate on the planet. You know, it'd be really easy just to go play pickleball, right? Or just play chess all the time, or, you know, drink. But instead, it takes a lot of courage to pay attention to what's happening right now and to step up and to take action for that. And all of you in the room have done that, have taken the courage to do that and to come and stand with me. And the town council did that as well this year for Freeport Can, as well as for recognizing me of all the wonderful other things that have happened, to recognize the importance, and it isn't me, it's the importance of the issue that we have right now facing us and facing the planet. And that's what I think you've all done, is to really face the importance of this and not run from it. And I'm so proud of you for doing that, but I'm proud of me for doing that. I'm proud of all of us for doing that. And I think we have a town to be really proud of, that it takes the courage to do this. And I look forward to doing more with all of you around that. And I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. And I got to thank that husband of mine. Because you know, because, okay, I got to thank that husband of mine because the reason half of you would listen to me from the very beginning is because you all like him so much. And he's such a nice guy that I get a little bit of edge, you know. I get the edge, and he smooths the edge. You know, it's really, we're a great pair. And I want to thank my family, too, for supporting me through all of this. Colin for all the artwork he's done for us and all the way he supported us, and Bridget for, you know, supporting us, and Adeline. And I want to tell you that I'm so proud to be able to do this for you. I want you to know when you grow up that I really tried. And that's really important to me, right? So thank you all. Thank you all.
So we've allotted you some time to eat and socialize. There's some food on the side. Please partake and give Kathleen hugs. And then in a short while, we'll have to start our meeting. We're going to be here for a few hours. So, but in the meantime, look forward to socializing and eating. Have at it.
Yes, you do. I'm going to make sure.
All right, we're going to call our meeting to order. We are here for council meeting number 6-23. We're here at Freeport Town Council Chambers. We'll start with a roll call, do Pledge of Allegiance, and maybe things will quiet down. So tonight with us we have Councilor Pillsbury,
Present.
Councilor Fournier,
Here.
Councilor Lawrence,
Here.
Councilor Daniele,
Here.
Councilor Bradley, Councilor Egan,
Here.
and Chair Pilch is here as well. So with that,
Peter's mic.
no, it's not on.
It's
He's not talking.
Okay.
And we have our town manager, Peter Joseph.
See the interim?
Soon to be.
For now. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Why do we have minutes to approve tonight? We do. Yes.
Should we update the council? I did receive permission.
Yeah, this seems like an appropriate time.
Yep. So our recording secretary, our town clerk, is not here with us. I decided to give her the day off after much begging on her part because she just got out of surgery to have rods and pins installed in her wrist, and I saw the x-rays about 2 hours ago. So she's actually watching from home, so we got to give her mad props for being here
Hope you feel better.
and watching, but she may be in and out for the next week or so with obviously follow-up appointments. So she will be taking minutes remotely. We're recording, and we'll probably have minutes, 2 sets of them, 2 meetings from now instead of next meeting, this meeting minutes. So just as an update.
Thank you. And Chris, we hope you feel better soon. I saw the x-rays too. There's quite a lot of metal in your arm, so hopefully it does the trick. But we do have minutes from our last meeting, which was held on March 7th, to approve tonight. So if anybody has any items they'd like to adjust, speak your piece. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written and waive the reading thereof.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Daniele. Any other items to change? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I have to abstain. That wasn't here.
With one abstention from Vice Chair Egan, who was absent at that meeting, or excused, rather, at that meeting. And, right, Councilor Bradley was there by Zoom. Right, you joined by Zoom, I think, on that night.
But I was in and out, so maybe I should abstain too. Okay, I abstain.
So Councilor Bradley abstains as well, so the motion passes on 5-0 with 2 abstentions. All right, next up, we have some announcements. I have 4 announcements to make. First of which regards the library. They have a terrific lineup of programs in March and April. So please make sure you follow them on Facebook and head to their website to sign up for their monthly newsletter. Freeport has started working on a climate action plan. To learn more about that project or to sign up for project updates, you can visit the project website at freeportclimateaction.org. Thirdly, the town of Freeport is always seeking volunteers for municipal boards and committees. I know we've got a few vacancies, so if you're interested in serving the town, want to volunteer, it's a good time to do so. And you can find forms online or at the clerk's office. And lastly, the second annual Freeport Can Climate Action Forum will be on March 28th. That's next week at 6:30 p.m. at Meeting House Arts, which is almost next door to us at 40 Main Street. And there you can hear from local, state, and international guest speakers about current efforts to address the climate crisis. Learn about the impact Freeport Can has had in its first year, helping our community find ways to act to address climate change. They are excited to continue their work as they move forward, and they hope you'll join them. And some of the guest speakers include the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board, the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future, and an international climate and policy specialist. Those are all the announcements I have. Do any other councilors have announcements to make? Councilor Pillsbury has one.
Just for the members of the council, just a reminder, if you want to attend the Wabanaki Reach programming that is being put on through the efforts of the Freeport Historical Society. It is, there are 2 sessions the first week of April, and if you're interested, I can send you the information and the dates. It's about 2 hours, and I think they both start at 5 o'clock. I'm going to be attending the one on Thursday, the 6th.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Next up, we have information exchange, where counselors get to give us updates on committee meetings or other things they've been involved in or other goings on around town. Councilor Pillsbury?
The library has been going through a process to look at capital planning and best utilization of the space of the library. And there have been a few meetings on it, but there's going to be more information to come and sort of more public engagement around the process, but just putting that out there that to be on the lookout that they're really trying to create a vision and a use of the library that meets the current needs of both the youth population and the new adult sort of work from home group. And they're trying to do it in a responsible way within the existing footprint of the building without necessarily saying we just need to expand. So I think it's showing a lot of progress, and they're doing it in a responsible way, and more information to come.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else? Councilor Egan.
Yeah, just a couple of quick updates. The Housing Committee is gathering a bunch of statistics and data to eventually present here, probably in early April. There'll be a presentation of data and some profile information, as well as a short list of some immediate recommendations that the Town Council can take action on to promote more housing development in our community, and then some long-term projects that are already mostly underway. I got a chance to also participate the last 2 project review board meetings related to a housing project, and got a firsthand experience of sort of watching that process. It's been a few years since I'd attended any of those, and individually I'm pleased to hear that the project was approved over here at 22 West Street.
Main Street.
Sorry, 22 Main Street on the corner of West and Main. So that will be moving forward, and hopefully there'll be some more projects that we can point to really shore up the residential development of our downtown plan.
In other news, the Freeport High School drama group has put together a 1-act play to compete in a state competition, and they won first place in the regional competition, which was held a week and a half ago, and they're going on to states this weekend to compete against all the other schools in their class to see who will win the state 1-act competition. I went to see the show. It was great. One of the shows got snowed out, but they did 2 of the 3. There's another show tonight, so if anyone is board of the council meeting, it starts at 7, and you can, it's better than I thought it was going to be. A little biased because I know somebody in the show, but it was a really good show.
Where's the state?
It's in Ellsworth.
Ellsworth, okay.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know what time Freeport's competing, but the competition's, I think, Friday, Saturday. So congrats to those folks. Any other information exchange? Okay. Next up, we have our penultimate town manager's report from Mr. Joseph.
Excellent use of the word, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. I've been practicing.
Can't wait till the ultimate one. It's going to be ultimate in many ways. We have a long agenda tonight, as always. I do have some important penultimate related items to report, though. I think we've got worked with council leadership and town staff, some of the department heads. We have put out the search consultant, recruitment consultant RFP for my position. So that's out there. We envision a public process, but that will be up to the council to decide when you interview and choose your final candidates. So we've been seeking people who are doing significant recruitments across the country through their professional associations, and also emailing it. So not just putting it on a website, but advertising it to those people that are doing searches per kind of some of our discussions. So actively looking for people that are interested to work with you guys. So I think that reflects our previous conversations with the council. have been working on budget development with your finance director, Jessica Malloy. So I'm giving her the greatest gift I can give, which is I'm telling her all the difficult things and saying that she can blame me when I'm gone when she defends it in front of the town council. So where I just want to give her the credit that I think she always gets, but it's always been great doing that, and I'm sad I won't get to do that anymore, but I think we're almost through most of the significant budget items. So we do have a few things that we're going to be bringing in front of the council, at least one, possibly two, prior to budget being submitted at the end of April. So probably the first meeting in April. You know, that agenda hasn't been set yet, but we've got some items for feedback before the budget's finalized that Jessica would like to get feedback from the council. So that will likely be her budget submission, not mine, since I won't be here when the official drop date for that happens. So, and along the same lines, have been working with several of our department heads, as well as the council chair. You've been in on some of those conversations. Dan and John may be in some of those as well, but working with download ongoing projects that I have that are out there and assign them so that there are no gaps. So identifying department heads that could be responsible for ongoing projects and updating them so that they are up to speed when those things develop after I leave. So probably we'll have I can think about 20 to 25 either pending or near future projects in the next 6 months that will be assigned out to the appropriate department and contact made with the other parties responsible for those so that they know who the staff person is in advance. So just wanted to let the council know. I know we're getting a lot of questions about that kind of who's going to be doing this after you leave, who's going to be doing that. I'm getting quite a few questions. So working on that, trying to finalize those lists. Electronically, you'll all have them in your inboxes and have access to each other so you can tell who's responsible for each project list as we go along. And other than the 8 other items I've got to talk about tonight, that's what I've got for now, Mr. Chair. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions? Good manager? No? All right, next up, we have a consent agenda to approve. I think there are maybe 2 items on it tonight. Yes, one is donations to the Freeport Community Library, including a rather sizable one from Ella Bean, and another is to accept a resignation from a member of the Shellfish Commission. Any reason why we need to take these up individually? Public comment. Oh, sorry. Thank you, councilors. I went out of order. Next up is not our consent agenda, but rather our public comment period, which is a time for anybody who wants to address the council on an item that's not already in a printed agenda. So if you have something that you want to speak to the council about, now is the time to do that. We allow everybody 3 minutes to speak their mind, not to question the council, but just to offer opinions and thoughts. So if anybody has opinions or thoughts, please step up, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you'd like to say.
Hi, Andrew Oswald. My question is, I didn't see a printed agenda, so I don't know if it's on or not, but I have a question about my perpetual question, which is, I never get an answer to, cemetery trust funds. And I asked see if I can pull it up here. I asked in May 2021, Tawny asked the town manager, this was my request through her, I think she was in your office, please ask for a list of investments and the performance of same involving the cemetery trust and perpetual maintenance funds. Who is handling the accounts, who picks the investments, and where are they invested, i.e., who is our broker? Thank you. I got a list from somebody that just listed the perpetual care funds and how much was in them, not the investments, not what the performance was or anything. And that was 2021. Last year, I think, of course, I bring it up every year. I got a letter from, I think, Jessica, maybe a couple years ago. I've lost track of it now, saying if we passed out any more money, we'd run out of money. You have a fiduciary responsibility. We've entrusted the town with perpetual care money. It's really not for social ideas to be invested in whatever we think is a great idea this week or whatever fund we want to do next week. It's really to gain the most investment for what we need to do with our perpetual care money. And I'm very discouraged. I heard say a few while ago there was 1.6% was our return on investments. In the last few years, that's a pretty poor return. If that's all we can do, then it's pretty bad. And I think we really need to get some answers on where this money is, what's it invested in, and why is it not performing better, and whose fault is it? You know, if it's the investment broker's fault, then we need to get a new investment broker. Who's watching the store here for the cemeteries? You know, I'm the treasurer down at Flying Point. We're a small little cemetery. We're the poorest one in town. And, you know, we got to mow the lawn. And people gave the town money years ago, and, you know, I keep asking this question, never get an answer. Nobody calls me. Nobody, you know, I get a letter, just some simple answers on it. How much is in my account, and not who involves it, not anything else. So I'd really hope that this year, especially with the economy going this year, with things going on, that we would step up and look at all our investments closer and see what's going on and why are we getting such a poor return. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I'm making myself a note to follow up with you on that. I've seen the accounts. There's nothing. We're not hiding anything. Happy to chat with you about our policies and returns and all that. So I will follow up with you personally. If you don't hear back from me in a week or so, please let me know.
It was reviewed last year by a subcommittee
Yeah.
here. I think you're right. I don't think anybody talked with Andrew after that, but
Right.
you guys did take a deep dive and interviewed the Bangor Savings Bank, who's the wealth management firm.
Yep. And they invested according to the policy that we directed them to, which was fairly conservative intentionally because we don't want to be too risky with the town's money. But we'd certainly show you what's in them and where they put them and all that. So
Probably still have the presentation from Bangor that, with all the performance over time for each of the funds, that you can
Okay.
have a copy of.
Great.
Remember that they handed
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, happy to share that. Yeah. Any other public comment? Anybody in the room or on Zoom who wants to share thoughts with the council? Seeing nobody in the room stepping up and no hands on Zoom, I think it's safe now to proceed to our consent agenda. Thank you guys for keeping me on track. Our consent agenda still has 2 items on it regarding donations and a resignation. Any reason why we need to consider these separately rather than together? Seeing none, I will make a motion that says, be it ordered that the March 21st, 2023 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any discussion? All in favor of adopting the consent agenda?
Aye.
That's everybody, 7-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Next up is item 44-23, to consider action relative to setting a public hearing to discuss amendments to our administrative code, section 509, to adopt stretch energy codes, effective July 1. Anything you want to say about this before we take the motion up?
We talked about it a little bit, but just to update the public, this would be adopting the 2021 Energy Code, which is ahead of schedule, is permitted by MUBEC, which is the main Uniform Building and Energy Codes. You can go ahead of schedule, if you will, on the energy codes if you want to require more energy efficient construction within the town. And I think the proposal that we've been asked to put forward to the council is to adopt the current stretch codes, which are last year's energy codes, effective July 1. So there would be a gap between your adoption and when it went into effect.
Councilor Daniele.
Have any towns around us already done this?
Yes, but I will rely on Google to give you a firm answer of where. I know that it has been adopted. I want to say Portland and South Portland, but I might be wrong with that. I'll do the research right now before we act on this.
Next time's fine.
Okay.
Any other questions for the manager? Councilor Egan?
Just to comment, I guess it still seems a little puzzling to me that we call it a stretch code when it's 2 years old. The 2015 code is the code that the town is operating under today. That's 8 years ago. So I guess I'm a little sensitive to that we're might be perceived as pushing something that's extraordinary and cutting edge and way ahead of the curve, and it's already 2 years old. So I'd like to just reinforce the fact that we're asking for a public hearing to adopt the 2021 Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code as it was convened and approved by that body 2 years ago.
Given that, would you like the privilege of reading the motion?
I would love to. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for April 4, 2023, at the council meeting starting at 6 p.m. at Town Hall, 30 Main Street, to discuss amendments to Chapter 2 Administrative Code, Section 509, to adopt energy codes effective July 1, 2023.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any other discussion for setting the public hearing for our next meeting on April 4th? None. All in favor of setting the public hearing?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I think that was everybody. 7-0. Okay. Next up, item 4523, to consider action relative to reapproving use of a town property request from Ella Bean. Mr. Manager?
Yep, this is for the morning festivities for the 4th of July. The race has always kicked off from that piece of property, so it's Memorial Park on Bow Street.
And it says it's the 4th of July race and kids fun run, starting at 6:30. Any questions on this? Councilor Fournier?
We've done this now for probably 35 years. Is there a way we could give permission that would maybe do it for a 5 or 10-year period, so we don't have to take up valuable time once a year to do something that we're always doing? Just wondering.
Yep, this is our internal requirement, so that's your requirement, the town council's requirement, that public buildings, parks, lands be approved for reserved use, so you have complete control over that process. Yep, so if that's something the council wants to do, you have the complete authority to do that.
Or better yet, could we give it to some administrative staff? I don't want to take time tonight. This is one of the items I think we could look at efficiencies and approve, and maybe down the road, and I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely doable. In fact, well, I don't want to just shoot from the hip, but I think it's a 1 or 2 sentence motion to approve multi-year if you want to do it. I would like let's not do it tonight, but I think it's doable. Yep.
Any other discussion? Councilor Pillsbury, would you do the honors on this motion?
Sure. Be it ordered that a request from Ella Bean, Inc. to use Memorial Park on the 4th of July be approved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any other discussion? All in favor of the request?
Aye.
I think that's everybody, 7-0. Thank you. Item 46-23 is regarding parklets. This is reapproving a parklet on North Main Street, on Main Street, the north end of Main Street, which is, I'll let the town manager describe this one.
In between DeRozier's and Sherman's. There's 2 parking spaces in a loading zone that gets taken up, turned into an 8-foot wide seating area with 3 to 4 tables and chairs. Heavily used, heavily successful during the summertime. We've tried other locations that have not seen anywhere near the use. I think this one's a clear winner. This is a temporary consideration until Main Street is redesigned. There has been a lot of talk about what the streetscape on Main Street looks like in the future, and if it includes features like this that are hard built into the actual curbing and sidewalk and things like that, so it doesn't need to be done with Jersey barriers and, makeshift wood platforms in the future. So I think in the next 4 or 5 years, there'll be some real opportunities to build features like this into Main Street permanently. But until then, this lets us safely put seating next to traffic without much added risk. The business owner adjacent has kept it clean, and this year is offering to furnish it with furniture, some furniture that he will purchase and some furniture that I think goes along with the park. So the parklet from last year. So looking to spend even more business money to support it instead of town money and donated money, which I think is a great thing. And I think he's asking for it to be approved before he commits any furniture and money. So doing this will give a clear signal that go ahead and buy whatever you want, and we'll let you put it there and set it up as seating. And that does not give reserved use. It gives general use to anyone in the town. I've taken some food down there and eaten it without buying food from there, so I know the public's concerned about that sometimes, is it, it's not for any dedicated use, although it is adjacent to a lot of heavy uses that like to use it, so.
Town Public Works sets up and takes down the concrete barriers that creates the,
They do, yep, early, they'll do it early in the morning, it'll take about an hour with a loader to move stuff around and put the platforms in. It's like 8 pieces of equipment that they have to lay out and move around to get just right, but takes work crew maybe an hour or two to do it.
right.
So I guess that's our cost at this point, is the labor cost to install.
Councillor Daniele?
Do we also have to reapprove other businesses putting tables out, like on the sidewalks? That happened, or is that not going to happen?
It's a great question for your town planner.
We changed that to make it easier, but I don't
Yeah,
remember.
it's allowable, but do they need to get annual approval for that? And do you want to step up to the podium and answer that question?
Not to put you on the spot.
No, it's a great question. To even go further on that, I think some places where parklets have been before probably are more appropriate for table and chair use on the sidewalk due to the low volume of usage, so.
We do have a newer provision that makes it easier for businesses to add outdoor seating on their own property. If you're talking about some that you have granted, you being the council, in the past on public property, I would say would want to go back and double check and see how you granted that approval. I don't know. I can think of one place right up the street. I don't know if it was for 1 year ongoing, but we can look at it, and if it was only for 1 year, reach out to them if the council's open to entertaining it again and have them come back.
I think the Met is probably what everyone's thinking about, which had outdoor seating on the sidewalk, which was pretty successful.
Yeah, that would be public, so it wouldn't really come under site plan provisions.
I was more interested in Bow Street. I really didn't see a lot of use there. Matter of fact, I kind of kept little notes, and maybe 1 or 2 times there was 3 or 4 people there. So I really questioned the amount of effort and everything we're putting in there. So just one point.
No, we're not, at this point, we haven't heard from that business that they want to put it back. That would be up to, if that request is made, up to staff whether they recommend it, but our observations agree with that there was very low to no use at the other Bow Street parklet. So unless there was a different plan on how to better utilize that space, I don't think it would be warranted to take away the parking.
Any other questions?
I'd like us to investigate that personally. The
Oh, the Bow Street one? The outdoor
yeah.
seating?
outdoor seating, thanks.
Next meeting, we can, if there's anything that needs to be approved for not outdoor seating, but also specifically talking about the Bow Street question, I think they've had outdoor seating on the sidewalk, on public sidewalk there before that was moderately effective as opposed to the parklet, which saw little to no use. So might be good if we contact them to ask if they'd want to put tables on the sidewalk instead of a parklet. Then we can approve both of those at the same time.
Or could we just offer that to any, or like a lot of businesses, just come in and tell us that you're doing it, and we can let the town staff say, yep, that's fine, kind of a thing. So it'd be a cool thing to try for the summer.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go.
Thanks, Jake. All right, Councillor Fournier, do you want to read this motion, item 4623?
Yes, be it ordered that the parklet at 120 through 124 Main Street be approved for period ending October 31st, 2023, with the same configuration as 2021 and 2022.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the parklet?
Aye.
That's everybody, 7-0. Thank you. All right, next up is item 47-23 regarding action relative to the appointment of an interim town manager. So our town manager, Mr. Joseph, is leaving us in about 2 weeks' time, a little over 2 weeks' time. And we are very fortunate, not that he's leaving, but that he's leaving behind a staff that is fantastic. And when we started looking around for somebody to fill his shoes on a temporary basis until we hire a permanent town manager, we're lucky to have a lot of good options. It was pretty easy for us at the council here to come up with a handful of names pretty quickly, all of whom we felt really confident would have done the job very well. Where we landed as a council and was that we're asking a team of people to step up, and do some of the duties that Peter has done jointly, but we are going to name an individual to be the official interim town manager with the support of staff. So that individual is here tonight. And we're going to ask Caroline Pelletier, who's our town planner, to step up as interim town manager until we can find a permanent replacement. But she will be ably assisted by Jessica Malloy, our finance director, who's also here tonight, and Judy Hawley as well, who's the current assistant town manager. And the three of them have all agreed to kind of step up and share in some of the duties. But Caroline will be our go-to for the things that we traditionally have gone to Peter for, with a few exceptions. And we've asked her to step into that and take over not his position and role, but also basically proposing that she take over his salary as well. So she'll make what Peter makes until the time we find a permanent town manager, at which point she'll return to being town planner, which is what she had said she wants to do. So I think we're all in support of that. So any questions? No, I know Caroline had a whole bunch of questions, but I think we've answered most of them. And I want to thank Caroline and Jessica and Judy for being willing to step up and make the extra effort, because I know it's going to be an additional time commitment. But I appreciate it. I love working with all three of you, so I look forward to doing more of it over the next few months. So I would love to read this one. This motion says, "Be it ordered that Caroline Pelletier be appointed as interim town manager effective April 6, 2023. Until a permanent replacement has been named."
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any other discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor of Caroline being our interim?
Aye.
That was a very vociferous 7 ayes, so congratulations, and look forward to working with you. Next up, we're on to other business. We have 2 consent agendas to deal with. And then what I'm going to do, just to give you a heads up, and anybody watching in public, is after we deal with the consent agreements, thank you, I'm going to ask that we do our executive session out of order, because we're going to invite our lawyer in for that, so we can get him on his way, and then we can proceed to the goals and the budget discussion after that. So with that, first up is a consent agreement request for 28 Cunningham Road, which the manager is going to introduce to us.
Yeah, so we've got, we'll ask you to speak in a second. We've got reps for, I think, both properties, right, from 28 and 90 Birch, so for the same firm. So what you have in front of you here for 28 Cunningham, the packet starts with this old tax card here, and there's also a letter in here from, this is, I just want to make sure I get it right. So this is Joseph Iskey and John Belisle, counsel for the owners of the property. There is an extensive notice of violation on the property. I want to be clear that the current owners of the property inherited this and did none of the work that is in question. They bought the violation. So there's no dispute there that the people who are asking through representation for the consent agreement own the violations or the alleged violations, however you want to look at it, but did not do any of the work. They are seeking to fix the problem. So the violations that were quoted are mostly addressable through permitting, or actually easily addressable in some cases, a little bit more difficult in other cases. There is a wharf that has been removed but can be addressed through permitting to allow that to, in some form, likely return. There was an expansion of the structure that the town believes was done without permits. I know there's a question how much of that was done without permits. It would not have been permittable at the time it was done, but under today's current land use ordinances, the expansion of the structure within the shoreland zone is permittable as it has been expanded. So they can go back and get after-the-fact permits to cover it. Our code officer is confident that those would be approvable, that there wouldn't be any hiccup there. There may be little details. There are some work that needs to be cleared with electricians, plumbers, things like that, certified that it was done correctly at the time. That would also need permits. The part that we'll need that isn't addressable on the administrative level, so between myself, the town attorney, and the codes officer, that would remain permanently are a small portion of the deck patio and walkway in the back of the house that's immediately adjacent to the water that would remain permanently, which would be a shoreland zoning violation. So essentially, there's going to be multiple things in this consent agreement. They're asking for conceptual agreement from the council that we move forward, both the town's attorney and the applicant's attorney, to draft a consent agreement. Obviously, if the council's not in agreement, we wouldn't go that route. They do have the right to, for example, appeal to the zoning board the notice of violation, or they can take any other measures that they're allowed under law to contest that. But they're trying to do it by agreement, which I think is great with the town. But they are asking for the deck, a portion of the deck, it's a small portion, but patio and walkway to remain within the primary shoreland setback. That will need essentially a permanent consent agreement from the town council. So that would be the council essentially saying, yep, we know that that wasn't allowed then, isn't allowed now, but we're going to allow it to stay. I think the thought process being that it was never cited for many, many years by previous town employees, and also was not caused by the current owner. But that's obviously a political decision that the council has to make. So all the other issues, unless I'm missing something that you folks want to bring up, I think the other issues are all addressable after the fact. But in order for all those after the fact permits to be issued, there would have to be a consent for this part to remain permanently before the code officer could go through all those after the fact permits. Anything that I missed or that the clients want to add? I don't know.
Yeah, and good afternoon. My name is John Belisle. I represent Cleve, Kapala, and Lusa Kittredge. Couldn't be here tonight, but thank you, Mr. Manager, for kind of taking this up and introducing it. I don't have anything to add other than what you've discussed. It's consistent with what we've discussed all along. Happy to answer any questions you have about the history of the property from my client's perspective. As the manager said, they bought it in 2019. They came to town hall, looked for permits. They had the intention early on of updating the property. It was a renovated camp that had been updated back in the 90s. Apparently, there's no record of those permits, but they had done some reasonable due diligence before they purchased it, and were unaware of all these violations, and only received this citation when they applied for permits early last year. So they walked into this issue without any advance notice, and that's why they're requesting the town's agreement that the NOV not be enforced on those particular issues. They have since then taken steps to apply for a permit through DEP for the pier and the wharf. It's been pulled out of the water until that permit is received. And they have hired, like the manager said, electricians and plumbers and other contractors to come in and inspect the property so they can work with Mr. Adams to obtain necessary permits for the existing conditions. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the history of their ownership or our process in investigating the property's history as well.
Councilor Bradley.
So is it correct to say that what we're being asked to do is to say that this one piece that cannot be permitted after the fact or by some other agency would be subject to a consent agreement if we agreed to the details of the consent agreement?
I believe that's, if I understand your question correctly, yes.
Okay. And that piece is the area on the deck?
So there are a couple pieces that have been cited by the NOV that cannot be permitted. The part of the deck on the exterior rear that faces the water,
Yeah.
It's within the shoreline, and then part of the exterior wall of the dwelling is over the shoreland boundary. And then there is a stone patio and a pathway that lead around the house. All those items, there are no permits for, and they could not be permitted today.
And these conditions existed when they purchased them?
Yes, sir, yeah.
And they did their due diligence and didn't discover these conditions were violations?
Correct.
What was their due diligence?
Well, they came, when they purchased the home, they had an intention of updating the home.
Sure.
And they came to Town Hall and they checked with Town Hall for copies of permits, and there are permits on file with the town. They also...
That deal with these particular aspects?
No, with other work that had been done on the house historically.
What due diligence did they do to determine that those features of the property were okay, which is what you're representing they determined when they bought the property?
So To be clear, they had no notice that there were any violations, and there was nothing on file with the town that there were.
Okay, did they hire a counsel or any kind of expert to help them work through this? Or they just buy it on their own?
No, they purchased it on their own, yeah. But these are all violations that there were no record of, and they'd have no reasonable way to know, violated town ordinance at the time.
But I guess what you're saying is that with respect to many of these things, there were permits that we had issued, and so there's sort of an estoppel kind of issue. Some of them, whether we approved them or not, and there are permits, they can be after the fact approved. And here are some that just sort of slid through the cracks because nobody knew they were violations. But isn't that the responsibility of a property owner to make a determination before they enter an agreement to purchase property? That's my question. That's the trouble I'm having. Here's one that wasn't subject to any permit, can't be after the fact, and your clients went ahead and pulled the trigger without getting any expertise, just as local buyers, because they didn't see anything, they said there must not be anything. And that seems to me to be a little cavalier from my experience and my judgment. So that's why I'm asking, you got anything to offer me on that?
Well, I mean, they took reasonable steps when they purchased the property, as any other person purchasing the property would.
What did they do?
They accepted the disclosure of the people selling the property. They came to town hall and checked to confirm there were no violations on file, that there were permits on file with the town. It's sort of like investigating a negative in determining whether there are any violations that exist. You purchase a home with sort of the presumption that there are not. My characterization is that they took reasonable steps when they purchased the property, and they shouldn't be penalized and forced to remove parts of their home because these things weren't on file through no fault of their own. Some of these had existed, from their understanding and from our investigation, for nearly 30 years.
So is your position that these violating aspects of the property should have been subject to violation if we'd been doing our job?
Yeah, I can't tell you what your code enforcement inspector, let me try to answer the question this way. If the code enforcement officer had gone out to the house before my clients purchased the property, back in 2018, they probably would have cited the same violations. But these violations are cited after they purchased the home, and so for them to have to remove all this stuff, it unfairly penalizes them. So, some of this, for example, the deck, if they took the deck off the house, the deck serves as a rear exterior door. So they would lose that door, they would lose that point of egress on the home.
How much of the deck is in violation?
Right.
Oh, I don't know if I have that number off the top of my head.
I'll take a stab. It's a couple feet. There was an existing deck. It was expanded closer to the water. It was at a diagonal to the water, so it got closer than the house so you can't go any closer when there's a pre-existing structure. 2 to 3 feet in a wedge, and then the patio underneath the deck is what we're talking about.
So if they cut 2 feet off the deck, would they not have to?
Some amount.
Some amount.
You could chop up the deck probably in an unappealing to the homeowner fashion and cure the violation while leaving the old footprint of the deck. Yes, that is what I think they're seeking to avoid by.
To avoid
getting a
the
consent.
issue about the egress and all that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take a look at the photos that we submitted with the letter, I don't know if you have those available. If your photos are in the same order mine are in, the second photograph shows you a picture of the rear deck. It shows you that door facing the water. They would have, in order to comply with this, they would have to remove and move that exterior wall of the home. They would have to remove that part of the deck, rear of that door right there, so they would lose that part of the house. And these are not.
Is that the town's perspective, that they'd have to remove the wall?
Not sure about the wall. I do know that part of the wall, we think part of the wall would have to go.
It's the part of the wall that's within the shoreline. This is my understanding. If the town has a different perspective, then that's.
I don't think either of us should commit to that to the town council tonight because I'm not sure. I don't want to say that you're wrong and then have that actually be the position. It's a couple feet that we're talking about. My understanding was it was just the deck, but it may also impact the corner of the structure. My understanding is that the house is not being asked to be removed. It's a diagonal triangular piece of the deck that is closer, one option to remedy it, I think, would be to remove that portion of the deck. The part closer to the road may also be in question. No, I don't think it is, because it didn't get closer to the water. Because a foundation permit was issued, so maybe a little background might answer the question, at least to the comfort level of the council. This old picture is photographic evidence that the town could find in this property card here. We're not 100% that this was the most recent configuration of the house since the last permit was issued, but the town's belief is that a foundation was poured with a permit underneath the existing picture on the front of this card. That deck that you see there is what was in place at the time, allegedly prior to shoreline zoning, and likely prior to shoreline zoning. The town doesn't have any, the town isn't taking a position that that deck was illegal by shoreline zoning in the 80s when this was taken. We thought they will give them that it was 10 years old existing at the time. They poured a foundation under the house as an expansion. To get to Ed's point of estoppel, the foundation permit probably shouldn't have been issued at the time, but it was, so it's legal. The foundation permit would be issuable under today's standards, ironically enough. So the work that was done is approvable for the structure and the foundation, as I understand it. So I don't think it would be chopping a piece of the house off. I think we've already permitted the foundation under the house, and that's going to stay regardless. I thought we were just talking about the deck, but if we need to confirm that to make anyone's decision, I can probably step out and try to do that.
Councilor Fournier?
I don't want to get that wrong, if that's important.
This area is full of old camps, so Les, God bless us all, probably built this prior to accepting a shoreline zoning on probably the deck, knowing less. And so if I understand this right, it's permitted now, but we have that time period where it wouldn't have been. I don't know, people come down and buy property and do disclosures and everything, and personally, every time I have to hire a lawyer, I have to cringe to try to do what I hope is upfront and honest through the current laws that are in place with the state of Maine. So personally, I'm tending to lean that this should be granted, because I don't see where it's going to create an erosion problem. Looking at this, I don't see where it's going to create any more environmental issues. I don't see where it's going to create any other conflicts down the road. It's been there for 30 years. So
Yeah, Councilor Egan.
Mr. Belisle, do you know how many times the property might have changed hands prior to your client buying it?
So the history in the property, as I understand it, my clients purchased it from the K family, who purchased it about 20 years ago, and so that was the last transfer of ownership. Prior to that, it was owned in the same family since I believe the 1940s. The camp had been built in the 1950s, expanded in the 1990s, and then that family sold it around the 2000 mark when the K family purchased it. And the K family sold it to my clients back in 2019.
And if this notice of violation or the infringement on the shoreline zone is not cured, is that something that would prevent a future buyer from getting title insurance on this property?
Correct. I mean, it creates an issue with marketability of the title if there's a notice of violation on there, and that's a burden on our clients who have to decide at this point if there are so many limitations on the property, they may have to just sell it and kind of move away.
Other than the deck, the other issues are the patio, walkway, and the wharf. And the wharf, you've already applied for a permit, so assuming Coastal Waters and DEP buys in, that's going to be okay. It's just the patio, walkway, and the deck.
Yes.
The walkway is hardly visible. The walkway is the random stones that just go down the side of the house?
Yes, sir. It's a paver pathway that leads up around the side of the house.
So the deck seems like the biggest of those
Yeah,
three.
I would agree with that.
And maybe the patio too, yeah.
So reading the NOV, which is extremely detailed, it would appear that the expansion completed without permits would comply with the current non-conforming expansion provisions between 25 and 75 feet from the unstable bluff. So the code officers but that no permits were issued at the time. So it can be permitted after the fact for the structure, the foundation and the expansion of the structure. So as I understand it, the question of what we can't approve is patio, part of the walkway, not the entire walkway from the front, but the part that was expanded at some point, stone patio down to the bank, and the deck how close it gets to when it gets closer than the expansion and the foundation that was poured was to the water when the town last issued a permit, which I think was in 1995. John, does that sound right, the foundation permit?
It was, I believe it was 94, 95.
94, 95, that's what I've got on the card here, yep, so.
Councilor Daniele?
What would the cost be of fixing these to the point of it being not an issue? So taking the deck back 2 feet and removing the patios?
I do not believe we've had estimates performed for that, so I couldn't give you a contractor's estimate, but my client's operating understanding is that this would be no less than $30,000 to remove all that landscaping. You essentially have to, it's an old deck, so you can't just kind of cut it and brace it and move on. You'd have to take the whole deck off and put an entirely new wood deck on for that side of the house. So it's not a insignificant amount.
Patio is kind of down here, you can see it, it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was asking about here, if you look at the photos, let's see, photo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th photo has the image of the float and the ramp and a walkway. See that one? The photo of the float. So is that
Yes.
part of the walkway that's in question, that wooden walkway that ends at the ramp? Is that the walkway that needs to be removed?
No, we're talking about, I don't know if it's captured in the photos.
Yeah, I think that the patio is not captured in any of the photos that are here, but it's essentially a laid stone patio.
Is that, which one are you looking
It's
at?
shown here on the site plan. If you look
with the deck.
Knickerbocker
Yeah,
Group.
so this is photo number 2, I think.
Right there.
There's a bar, looks like a covered
Yeah.
barbecue. Is that the patio?
Yep, that's part of it, yep.
Okay.
And you can see right here, that's listed as dock.
Got it.
That appears to be below top of bank, the wood structure that you're talking about. So it's considered differently for,
Oh, so that would be part of the wharf permit?
that's
the
below.
coastal waters and all
Our
that. Yep.
75-foot measurement starts at top of bank for this, everything in question here.
Got it.
So I think they're looking at the wood ramp running down, or part of the dock that's running down to where the actual gangplank is.
Right.
It's
it.
below the bank, so it's probably in an intertidal area there.
So that's probably a coastal waters DEP thing that we don't need to.
They'll have to get all that permitted,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which, there's something that's permittable there. The configuration would have
Yeah.
to be approved by DEP, Coastal Waters, and Army Corps. But there's not the town isn't saying that you can't put a dock there, but you need to get permits for it.
Right.
Maybe the same one could go back if it's permitted, but we're not sure of that.
So the K families who your clients bought the property from, and the deck was put on not by the K family, but by the previous owners?
Correct. That's the explanation that they received from the K family.
Right.
There's no way to kind
No
of.
records of that deck construction?
Correct.
And the town doesn't have any records of that either, or else we
Right.
would have clearly said it. Who added it, who built it. We know it was there. We know they didn't build it. It's older construction. That's all we know.
But we know that the deck was constructed after the last permit.
After 95, I've got a photo in front of you that would show that. So we've got a dated 1995 photo that shows no foundation under the camp, no deck expansion, the very front orange card there. That's looking at the deck hanging off the side of the camp, and it's not in its current configuration. And we believe that was taken at the 94, 95. Well, there's 1995 things written on here, so we're assuming it was in the 90s.
So what you're telling us is that deck was permitted?
Yes.
That
That
the
deck
town-
can stay, we're assuming that deck
Was there-
existed prior to shoreline zoning.
Fair enough.
We may be giving them the benefit of the doubt.
And the
but
one
I
that's
think
on this paragraph was built sometime thereafter, before your clients bought this house. We don't know by whom. Okay, and then all answers you gave me about their ability or responsibility for looking into the permitting of that deck is your presentation to us about why we should enter this consent agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
So, can I ask a hypothetical question? and somebody can stop me if this is too far afield, but if I
Stop.
if I build an addition on my house, but I don't seek any permits for it, and then I go to sell my house, and somebody says, would you sign a disclosure saying that there are no known violations? I can sign that disclosure in good faith, because nobody's come to inspect my new addition. But I can't sign a disclosure that says everything on my property has been validly permitted.
I don't know what.
I shouldn't sign that.
I don't know what.
Right, that was-
Right, that's the difference, yeah.
You would have liability if you signed that.
Right, somebody could
You're
sue, you know,
misrepresenting.
yeah, yeah.
Either way, you have the liability. I guess in either of those cases, it doesn't
Well, if I say I don't-
exempt the purchaser from doing his due diligence to find out whether there are violations on the property.
But there were no violations at the time they bought
Yes,
the
there were.
property.
This deck was in violation.
No noticed violations.
No notice is a different issue. That's between the seller and the buyer. This is between the town and the buyers.
Right.
And I don't know how I feel about it, but I just think that to say that, they were sort of wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and they walked in and looked for permit violations without hiring anybody to look at what other violations there might be is a little bit cavalier from my experience. I don't know, how much did they pay for it?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
$100,000 or more?
Oh, yep. That's
Sure,
safe to say
it's a
that, yeah.
valuable piece of property. Anyway, that's my problem
Yeah,
with
yeah,
this.
I see that. Counselor Daniele, do you have something?
Would a building inspector pick up on this kind of stuff, or is that not under their purview?
Picked up on it this time.
This stuff
No,
usually.
when you're getting your home and you say, I want to have a building
Inspector,
inspector
yeah,
come and,
I find this stuff usually gets caught at the mortgage loan survey point. So a lot of these things happen on cash transactions when there's not an underwriter looking at them. We catch them when there's not an underwriter or a title insurance company looking at them. The title insurance company, the underwriter catches them when there is a bank involved. So I'd say probably 3 to 1, 4 to 1, they come from a bank finding them. You did one with the people on Lower Flying Point that were, right off of Lower Flying Point, that were buying the house that was like 10 feet too close. It was caught on the mortgage loan survey, and they couldn't close, they couldn't sell because the bank wouldn't finance the house because they were within the setback. That's very typical how we find them. Sometimes those surveys are right, sometimes they're wrong. In this case, that's not how it got found. It got found when they came in to apply for, the new owner came in to apply for permits to renovate the house. The code officer looked at it and said, okay, this is doable, but this doesn't match anything that the town, some of this is doable, but it doesn't match any of what the town has on record for the property. Went out and looked at it, and it was like, version 1.0 versus version 5.0, what was there on the ground. Again, not that the current owners did anything, that doesn't give Councilor Bradley any comfort in his position. I understand, I agree with that, but it was done by previous, so.
Can I ask you a question regarding the permit that they came in to seek for the expansion? If they had to adjust the deck and whatever else to come into compliance there, could they still do the expansion? Still expand the house and add value to the property?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know that I can answer the client's.
Correct me if this is wrong, I don't want to speak for the clients. They came in, I believe, for a permit to do a 30% expansion, right? A permitted expansion within the shoreland zone, thinking that they were starting at 0, and they wanted, or thinking they were starting at 100%, they wanted to go to 130%. In reviewing it, the code officer said, you've already had, I think, close to a 30% expansion done when this building was done. They've already used up their expansion when the previous foundation was poured. So I think that they're not going to, I think that they've not accepted that they're not going to get an expansion within the shoreland zone that they originally thought that they would be able to get when they purchased the property. In order to go and do the backwards facing permitting, they're going to need to use that 30% expansion, or most of it.
So the whole house is in the shoreline zone?
Yeah, the
subject
deck,
to the 30%.
the back part of the deck that goes out this way also counts towards square footage, for example. It's permittable because it doesn't go closer to the bank, but it's this whole, the different, I mean.
So they can't really expand the house?
And the, adding the basement.
Regardless of what we do tonight, they
I
still
don't know if they can expand it, but
probably
they've eaten up a lot of the expansion, in the town's opinion. They may have a different opinion, they could make that argument if they want to, but I think the town's opinion is they've used most of their expansion when, they will use most of their expansion permitting this after the fact.
Yeah.
So the expansion's already been done.
Basically, yeah.
That's why they can permit it after the fact with some of the expansions.
So what do they need our consent for then? If they're not gonna be able, to like make it,
To leave the portions of the deck and the patio that are closer.
They can't get
If
them
those
permitted.
aren't in question, let's say you could take a magic laser and chop off the parts that are closer than the original house was expanded, which is definitely unfavorable to the owners. If we could do that and restore and revegetate it like like how it should have been left in theory, a long time ago, they could get after the fact permits for the stuff inside the house, the basement, all those kind of things that were supposed to have been done. The part that we can't issue those permits for until the council
Approves it.
and the homeowner enter into a consent agreement saying the violation part can stick. And then once you say that's good, we're not going to do anything about it, the code officer then can issue all the after-the-fact permits for the expansion, for the renovation, for everything that happened by previous owners. So they would have a compliant piece of property that they could do what they want with. They probably wouldn't be able to expand it much in the town's current opinion. But that could change in the future, too. The house is almost completely, I think, the structure is completely within the 75-foot setback. So unless state law and the town's shoreline zoning regs change significantly, they would be limited to expansion rules that are currently in place or as they're amended in the future.
Within the 75-foot, meaning between 75 feet and the water line, that's where the house sits.
Yeah, almost everything.
What's the hatched area on the
That's mostly outside of 75 feet. I can't read it.
sorry.
See that line? John, do you see that ziggy line that goes?
Yeah.
Are we looking at the site plan?
Yeah, we're looking at the Knickerbocker Group plan dated 2021. That hashed area, there's like a zigzag line that goes immediately up frame of that. That is the 75-foot setback.
Possible buildable area.
Outside of 75 feet.
Yeah, the 75, this is the zigzag line is the 75 feet. The hashed area is proposed buildable area. Yeah.
Yep. So the house could be picked up and moved and refoundation poured and all that stuff at great expense and expanded outside of the 75-foot primary building setback. Like most properties on Lower Flying Point and Wolf's Neck that are down on the water, you got to get it up and move it 75 feet back to really do what
Well,
you would want to do.
it would have to fit in the hashed area.
And you
which
still
it
got to do lot
doesn't
coverage and all
really,
that.
yeah.
You got to meet a whole bunch of standards, but you have a lot more flexibility outside of the 75-foot setback. I mean, this is immediately adjacent to the water, which is why everything becomes an issue for permitting. In statewide, within the 75-foot setback from a regulated water body is a major headache to do work in. Because you're only allowed that small expansion once over the ownership of the property, or once over the lifetime of the property of the structure prior to what existed prior to shoreline zoning going in place.
You guys have any other questions? Yeah.
So they can't do anything anyway, so they can't increase the value unless they build in that one property. They can't increase it by doing more building on what's existing right there.
I'm going to ask our non-expert, but the only person who knows the answer to that question in the room, can you go up under the current regulations? Could they go up? Or is it square footage or is it cubic, is it volume now? I forget how it changed.
Square footage now.
So up is always a possibility?
They might be able to go up. I am not familiar with the application.
Understood. We're not, this doesn't constitute building permission or anything like that, but there are things that they could do. Expanding the footprint probably is not one of them, at least not significantly. You'd really have to do a square footage calculation.
Right.
You know, they might get 10 or 100 or something like that, but
It's also setback dependent on what you can do so far.
Right.
okay.
They're
so
between a rock and the council.
So the question tonight is a head nod of whether we go forward with doing it a legislative consent with the owners to allow the patio and portion of the deck to remain. If the answer is no from the council, they have a couple other things that they can explore, or they could consider we could issue an administrative consent for most of these items. The dock, they've already corrected,
Could you do the deck? Could you do the patio? Could you do the so you can't do the three things that
the three things that they're seeking are why they're here, yep.
I think they're acting in good faith here. I don't think there's anything that they've done nefariously. I don't think they want to be nefarious. I think they want to do the right thing. I think we should approve it.
I'll agree with you. That's why both of these are in front of you. I think that both of the owners are trying to correct the issue.
I'm less comfortable with the patio and the walkway. They're pretty easy to take up, and we've cited other people that put a granite picnic table where they shouldn't, and they had to remove the picnic table. So I want to make sure that we're being consistent. So, the deck is still struggling with that, but it seems easy to take the patio up and the walkway up.
This has been here for 30 years or so.
Likely.
I'm just, and it wasn't a problem until we created a law that became a problem. I mean, it always violated the law, just nobody.
Yeah, even when they put it in, it was never,
I get it, but these
permitted it.
guys are not the ones that did it. And in 30 years, no one visited the property to say, hey, this is a problem.
Doesn't that encourage people to just say, if you do something, just don't get a permit for it? Because then 30 years from now, you can just ask the council, and your excuse can just be that, well, it's been there for 30 years and no one's complained about it.
I guess I'd like to know what the cost would be of like removing the patios or something like, is this a $30,000 expense, or is this just pick them up and move them 5 feet, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like,
It's a site work expense, people with, I would say normally a bobcat, but I don't know if that's allowed, power equipment, how close you get to the bank and all. I mean, manually, it's picking up stones and moving them, so a crew, concrete pavers or stones, right?
I believe so, yeah.
It's a combination, I think, so. It's not a poured solid concrete patio that would need to be jackhammered out, but it's manual work, so labor. Then reseeding and revegetating and.
Can I see a blow-up of the photograph that shows the patio?
I wouldn't say the cost to remove the patio is prohibitive, but I would say that
Patio? I don't know if I have
They-
a patio.
no,
Is it this one?
similar construction, those stone.
Yeah, I agree.
As close as I can get, I think, or it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's
We're
over
trying to
here.
find
It's
the
over
patio,
here.
the construction of the patio.
Why don't you try Google? I'll try Google Earth, see what we get
Okay.
from. I think I've done that before. I don't think there's good overhead view.
Has the gas grill.
Oh,
That's
that
it?
was, yeah. I
guess-
guess it was the side.
the question is revegetating it going to be better for the environment, world, shoreland than it is right now, right? Like, is it going to hold up better? I don't know.
They have to
Well, it
revegetate it.
hasn't had a problem, that's what I'm saying. I mean, legally it's got a problem, but there isn't any erosion apparently there, and it hasn't, I mean, if there was erosion, I think you would have seen it. And it would have been brought to someone's attention. Isn't that why we have shoreline zoning, to reduce erosion and all that? That's why we have it.
Or
So that-
eyesore. Yeah, I mean, I think vegetation, grass or woody vegetation, shrubs or whatever would be better for runoff purposes. And within 75 feet, the water's hitting the stones, it's going into the water. Whether it picks up anything from the stones is dependent on how clean and well-maintained they are. So if someone sweeps it all the time and doesn't put dog waste on it, it's great. If someone's dog goes on it and it goes into, you shut down a whole clam fishery if the dog waste starts getting washed out. So this is why shoreland zoning exists, to keep people, so that's why primary structures are set back 75 feet. Somebody sometime thought 75 feet was a good number to allow chemicals, waste, bacteria, whatever, to infiltrate into the soil and get absorbed before it hits the water body. It's not magic. You can have a really crappy lawn maintained within 75 feet that is worse than these people's patio, but that's what the regulation is. In theory, it's better to have vegetated surfaces.
Yeah. Two questions. I bought some property a while ago, and my property was not right. The guy built a garage, it was over the line, he didn't know it, and I had to come before the Board of Appeals, if I remember right. So this cannot be rectified by the Board of Appeals, correct?
It could be challenged to the Board of Appeals. There's not a variance that there's not a permission that the Board of Appeals could give to allow this to remain in place unless the homeowner does have the ability to challenge the code officer's findings to the zoning board. They haven't chosen to do that. I think we have a stay. Is there a stay? We're letting them maintain that right of appeal while they explore this avenue. I think it's mutual that we don't want to do one if the other's an avenue. We don't want to force them to do both at the same time, so.
The other point, I don't know, maybe I'm a little off to side here, but, we're going to be discussing council goals, how we want to be inclusive and welcome to people coming to our town. If we're going to be inclusive and welcoming to people coming to our town, what's going on here, I don't think is right. I look at this property that was built upon 30 years ago. The people have come up in good faith trying to correct the issue. We can nitpick on the piece of deck. We can nitpick on the piece of the rock walkway going out there. I think our code enforcement officer, who has been to the property and does a very thorough job, is kind of comfortable with the agreement that's coming for us tonight, and I think it should be granted. Thank you.
So, show of hands, how many people would grant it as is with all the patio, the walkway, and the deck? How many people would grant it as is? 2.5. Councilor Pillsbury?
So I agree with what Daryl just said. I mean, I don't know the folks that bought this house. I assume they acted in good faith. Did they not take the extra step to ensure that everything was compliant and up to code? Possibly. I think that I'd be comfortable, if there's something that can be removed to not make it a violation, like the walkway, I think that that's a reasonable step for us to ask. That's not harming their house. That is something that they bought something that's in violation. I think that, why would we grant something like that? I could see us granting the deck because it's attached to the house. It is a physical structure. It would incur a significant expense to fix it. I mean, is there the middle ground of saying, you got to take up the patio, we'll do the deck, and the patio's the penalty for not doing your actual due diligence to ensure that this property met all the requirements before you purchased it? Because I also worry about the expectation we're setting in the future, to your point, Dan, of just saying, well, just don't get a permit, don't worry about it, sell. The person can just come before the council and say, oh, I didn't know. That's not right either.
Right. Jake?
Could we ask them to remove the patio before they either sell it or ask for another permit? So we're not saying that it's okay, but we give them a permit now, solves the problem, and then we say, but eventually this walkway really should come up and that we don't want it replaced or anything like that.
So I'll get a little bit into the next one, which you're going to be talking about in a second, which is a separate piece of property. One of the conditions that DEP has proposed in that case is something very similar to what you're saying, that if it gets removed, destroyed, or degrades below 50%, that it's not rebuildable for a patio structure. We believe that they'll be asking for those on pretty much any consent within the shoreland zone at this point, whether it's a structure. We don't know that for sure. We haven't got that feedback from them on this property, but it's likely that DEP may say all of this stuff can stay within the 75 feet only if it degrades to 75%, it's removed anyways. I'd be very comfortable with that in this case. The question of whether it's above or below 50% right now is an open question that would need to be answered for the stone patio. It's not brand new. It hasn't been maintained or laid in the past 10 years, 20 years.
If we consent, they could then rip this all up and put new patio down?
So they could maintain it if there wasn't a condition, not rip it. You mean?
Okay, I would definitely want a condition then,
Yeah.
that it doesn't just get replaced, because that would be,
Insulting.
yeah, exactly. Thank you.
But I mean, we also know that that's not a positive impact for our shoreland, right? I mean, the deck doesn't, I just see, to Peter's point when you said, there are reasons why we're not, just concrete up to the shoreland. I mean, it would be better if it was just removed and grassed over. Like, why?
Are you talking about grassing it over, or are you putting in not grass, but what needs to be there, which is shrubs and little trees and that kind of stuff? But here's the other thing that we're saying is like, hey, you want to buy a house in Freeport? Study our codes first before you buy it. That's who does that? Did you do that when you bought your house?
Of course.
You study the codes to say.
Of course. I hired a lawyer to look at everything I owned and to tell me whether I was in or not. And I think most people who buy on the shore do that. It's a very complicated place. Overlapping jurisdictions. Anybody who buys a house along the shore should be doing that. This isn't a moral judgment.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think what we're trying to do is convince each other of each other's points of view, and what we really probably ought to do is let these good gentlemen know what we would be likely to do, and you may have the votes, and then if you don't, you don't. Let's find out.
So what about if we had a motion to approve a consent, removing the patio and the walkway, but leaving the deck, how many people would be supportive of that? Assume,
A consent agreement that allows the deck to remain, but the patio and the walkway come out.
right,
I would be supportive of that.
right.
I think that's reasonable.
I like the other idea, though.
Right, but if we can't, because I'm assuming we didn't have the votes for the full consent agreement.
But, no, I'm saying is where if it disintegrates or
Oh.
you can't replace it, but you can maintain it.
The deck, the patio, and the walkway.
No, not the deck, but the patio, because that's really what we're talking about, right? I mean, and it's not concrete, it's stone, which could have,
You don't have to remove it, but you
don't
can.
have to remove it, but
take
if,
care of it, fix it, repair it.
I think that's setting up a
Yeah.
future conflict, like, well, in 2023, they said.
Right.
well,
can
no one's done
replace.
that to us so far, I mean.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the
in-
problem I have, I guess, with, it seems like we're just picking this segment in time to start enforcing what should have been enforced a long time ago. And that's why I was asking about the history of the property. It's really hard for me to say that there should be any penalty to someone who is doing something that 4 or 5 other property owners have already done, which is to buy property and have it go through, and there's no notice of violation on record anywhere. So it seems rather arbitrary if I'm on the other side of the table, like, what, all of a sudden this ton of bricks is on me because I happen to be coming in for a legal permissible building permit with a code officer that's doing his job. And the previous owners didn't have that experience. And they were able to get permits and do things without any notice of violation at all, when in fact, there was a violation, because there's plenty built within the shoreline zone. So it just seems awfully hard to pick an arbitrary moment in time to say, well, those rules didn't apply then, but they apply now. And so that's why I'm thinking that we have to set a line somewhere, and if it's reasonable to think that taking out the walkway and the patio is an effort to define it and that nothing else gets built in that shoreline zone, I think I could get comfortable with that. That's not perfect. It's far from perfect, but it's far from even really good. But it's at least something to give the current owners reasonable hope to be able to live and enjoy their property.
It sounds like most people want the patio to go at some point, but does it have to go before they build or change or do any renovations? I would suggest we just set the tone that, the patio has to go, and 5 years when you're going to build again, something that they could plan for. And
You might want to reconsider that after we talk about the next one, which is another patio case. So maybe you could be.
Bring the other one in.
Maybe.
Let's do them together.
Maybe you could be consistent. Yeah, maybe we could be consistent. I do believe that DEP is going to require, DEP has final sign-off on anything you guys agree to. They have veto authority at the Commissioner's office to consent agreements. It's our understanding that they've told us that they will require on these, some of these can be allowed to stay. If we sign off on them, there's going to be that degradation, removal, destruction provision. Like if a storm happens and the building gets wiped out, you don't have the right to reconstruct. You have to, it has to get better moving forward with time. So, so if you want to move on, I think I've gotten some feedback as to what you're looking at, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Sounds like to me you just give me the solution. So if DEP is going to overview our agreement tonight, and if this passes, and in fact the patio is attached to this consent agreement that passes, and there's a violation of DEP there, they're going to address it. And I think they're much more, in my opinion, have much more knowledge than I've got to make that decision whether the patio stays or the patio don't.
Me too.
So as far as I'm concerned, I think that what has been presented to us tonight should be approved. It is then forwarded to DEP. DEP will review what's going on there, and if in fact there are serious issues that affect the environment, that will be probably taken care of, and I think the owners probably, expect that.
So if we can't get the votes for all the items in the consent agreement, how many would support leaving the deck and leaving everything in place but not the ability to rebuild? I think is what people are talking about. So
Not the ability to rebuild.
leave everything as is, but if it gets destroyed, you can't rebuild it.
Yeah, I mean,
So it sounds like,
that was my
like,
assumption for any
Yeah.
consent agreement.
and Matt's sort of a mostly yes on that, okay. Okay. Do you have what you need from us tonight? Since we're not voting on anything, you're just looking for some guidance from the council, and
Yeah, I think
you
we'd
got it,
go
and-
forward based on that and present something to you for final review. Does that sound like the right approach?
Yes, that's exactly what we're asking for. Everything can kind of be negotiated
Yeah.
out. And to the extent there are items within there that you'd like to kind of work out, we can propose alternatives with staff, and you can kind of vote on those alternatives.
And you're sticking around for the next one as well, right? Different client, I know, but.
Correct, yes. I'll be representing the next
Okay.
property owner.
Does everybody have the 90 Birch Point letter? One came Thursday, you got it by email. This one came Friday, you got it yesterday by email. You can write these down if you want them.
Okay.
So, and I told them I'd say this, but they were just asked to prepare these last week, the representative for the property owners, so please don't consider them late by not being in the packets. That was our ask, so they saved me time and Nick time, so.
And that's a letter with 2 pictures, yeah?
Yeah, and there's a similar plot plan in your packet that went out for that property. Similar situation, little different set of circumstances. Some items that are correct, let me get my notes.
It's the same one.
There was a wharf, this is less complicated because there wasn't an expansion of the structure. The structure was at the 75-foot setback, the building structure, the residence. There was a wharf which has been removed, and I think they're going through permitting for it, or they're able to go through some permitting for wharf, right? So,
Correct. We've already gone to the town's coastal commission.
so we think that's addressable in some form,
Yes.
the town does. The question is the patio, a more modern patio, more recently built. I think the homeowner could tell you that, or they've told us that they asked the town previously and were told that that didn't count as a structure verbally. Legally, that doesn't mean anything, but from an ethics standpoint, they did ask the question of a town official and got a verbal answer that is inconsistent with state law. So I think that where a lot of this on the previous 28 was done, nobody really knows who did what, and did anybody actually get permits and ask questions. It was done in the 80s, maybe the 90s. I think the current homeowner has represented that to us, and it's been told by staff that worked in that area that that was consistent with the answers that were given to other people that asked that question in the past 10 years.
So what you're saying is that unlike the prior situation where the buyer didn't ask any questions about the offending pieces, this buyer did ask about what are now considered offending pieces and was told that they were permittable or legal.
I think that's correct. I don't want to speak for the property, yep, so.
Well, that's what you're telling us. I get it from both sides, but I wanted to make sure that's what you were saying.
That's what I'm saying.
And that answers my question about,
By violation, they built the violation.
They caused it, but they also
asked
tried to do
permission.
their
Yeah.
diligence.
not
so-
tried to, they went in and they asked. And they were told by, look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. They were told by the people who have the responsibility in this town to tell people who ask those questions that those are legal. And so they had a right to rely on that. And that matters to me, at least as one person on the council, to hear that. It's why I couldn't vote, or wouldn't have voted, had we voted, the prior one, because it seems to me due diligence on the part of an owner is to do just what these people did.
Same
If
set
they
of
get the wrong answer, that's not their fault.
Yep. Different, same violation, different set of circumstances is the one we
Well,
previously.
related to us.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's why it's in front of you, because town staff feels comfortable that this is justified as a consent. It's not something that
Yep.
somebody just did intentionally. I mean, they did intentionally, but intentionally flouting the law.
Right. The other thing is that this guy came in to ask for a permit, and these guys had no clue, so it wasn't,
We have no record that anybody did. It's consistent, it's potential that somebody in the 80s or early 90s came in and asked that same question at town hall, but nobody has a recollection or a memory of it, so.
no, but what I'm saying with the last one,
Yeah.
the owners came in, and they could have done their due diligence, but who would have known?
They would have told us. If they had done it, they'd be here screaming. They'd be saying, we asked and we were told it was legal.
No, to be fair, they did pull permits, though.
They did pull permits, and that's when they found the
But you
problem.
don't, it's the negative part. You don't pull permits on something that isn't permitted. It's illegal because it wasn't permitted.
there's-
You got to
there's-
ask
there's
the
no
question.
dispute- there's no
I don't want to
dispute.
argue. I know how you all feel. I don't feel the same way. This one, I feel differently because they did come in and ask.
And there's no dispute that in the previous case that they're not saying that they asked and were told, and we're saying they weren't. Everybody agrees that they didn't ask those questions that maybe somebody else could have.
So in this case,
This is the one where
right,
DEP
so
told
let me,
us.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So they came in 2013-14, asked Mr. Reeder for permission to build a stone patio. He didn't issue a written permit, but said verbally, yes, it's okay to do what you're planning to do. And town staff, I think the way you phrased it was, that's consistent with what he told other people at the time? Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yes, I believe that that is accurate. That is what I've been
That's what
told,
you've
that that
been
was an
told,
answer, that patios did not require a permit of this type,
That's what he believed and what he would have been likely to say to the homeowners. Okay.
documented in cases, yes,
And then actually written down in other cases he's written down.
possibly.
Oh, okay,
Not in
well,
this
okay.
case, yeah.
Okay.
So they did wrong relying on verbal advice that's not legally binding, however, it is still town advice.
Right.
So you're not legally bound to give them this. We would probably win in court if you pushed it, but we would also look like big jerks, is
I'd
my
like to have the
opinion.
case.
Anything that you want to add that we haven't discussed already?
So Ben Willauer is here, and he can offer a full account of his interaction with code enforcement office, the staff at the
I don't
time,
think we need
both when
that.
he expanded the, if you need it, if it's useful.
Hey, I don't know that we need it. so.
I think we take him at his word, and it seemed consistent from what other staff have told me, so I think
So
that's,
I'm trying to read the room here. It sounds like we're looking pretty favorably upon this one.
this is the situation where DEP would also write that
The same,
50% degradation,
Yeah.
it's not perpetual, but if you keep it in good condition, you can keep it, but if it gets degraded or future owner ignores it and it degrades, it will have to go away eventually, so.
And do we have the right to go and review this? So when it does meet 50%, maybe our codes enforcement officer could say like, hey, or when he checks it next, kind of, or he
Or
or
if
she.
a permit 20 years from now was pulled on site, DEP and the town would both have the
They put it in
consent
our-
will be recorded in the registry, so.
You're going to put that in our consent agreement as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they,
So it won't be
yeah, we
just the
can.
DEP permit.
I mean, I think we didn't,
There's a small nuance there, which is this is structural integrity.
Step up to the podium just for the.
The patio was built this way for structural integrity to the septic infrastructure of the house. It's not like we just built the patio because that's what we wanted. The builder, Fred Reeder, and the Paul Napolitano, the earth contractor, all consented on this was, and Pinnacle did the work for how to put this together. The access for the top of the septic tank is right in the middle of the thing. So as much as I totally appreciate where you're coming from on the degradation of DEP's piece, what we're trying to emphasize is if that patio goes away,
You got
lose
other
the
problems.
egress, and
Yep.
you're on a hillside. So there's a structural component that's somewhat necessary there. So it's not just the patio.
yep.
Got it. So I saw a bunch of heads nodding that we're favorable on this one, and we can ask Peter to draw up a consent agreement that we're likely to agree with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I got a bunch of nodding heads here, so, yeah.
And if I could just add something on, and I apologize for jumping around here. If it's useful to the council, my clients, Lucia and Cleve, have arrived, and they could provide additional information about the due diligence they performed when they purchased the house in 2019. If that's useful to council and you'd like to receive that information.
Anybody like to hear that?
I don't need it, but
I don't need it, but if anybody wants it, I don't want to prevent him from speaking.
I mean, sitting here thinking about this, it would be, Fred Reeder is still alive, right? I mean, anybody could get an affidavit for Fred Reeder. Yeah, I'm a little surprised that in all of these cases, Fred, who is sort of implicated in many of these permissions, is not asked. Do you remember this one? I don't need it, to be honest. But it just strikes me that with things this costly, that'd be an easy thing to get. If he did it, which I'm sure he did, because you were there with him.
So does anyone need to hear from the sort of applicants on the other one?
I think we kind of.
I think, no, yeah.
For
For the
28
Cunningham Road one.
Well, isn't that what you You asked them what they did for due diligence, isn't that what they? that's what
This is
we
90 Birch
asked.
Street.
No, this is,
this is
they're
28.
going back to the previous one.
Oh.
They're now here, they weren't here before. They've offered to explain what they did for due diligence
On the.
on the Cunningham Road.
I'd like to hear that, sure, that's it. Well, if you guys are all going to approve it, I don't need it.
Well, we've approved that sort of middle ground one, but, yeah, I mean, you're here, you made the effort, yeah.
Yeah, Lucia's here, and she can fill you on exactly what they did in 2019 when they purchased it.
Yeah, thank you, Lucia Kittredge. Yeah, we bought the house in 2019, and before we bought it, I came to the town office and I went through the file, asked to have a file. I made a copy of all the permits in the file, and I asked if I could meet with Mr. Adams. So I met with him, and I specifically asked him, I said, we've been told by our real estate brokers that the property, that everything that's here is grandfathered. And I asked specifically if the 30% expansion had been used. And he said to me, if there's nothing in the file, then it hasn't been used. So we bought the property thinking that it was, that expansion had not been used and that there was nothing that was on the property that was a violation. So we did that. We also, when we hired an architect, right after we bought the property, we commissioned to have a survey done. We hired an architect, and the architect met with Mr. Adams a number of times to get more information. So we thought we were doing everything right. But when we submitted the building permit at that point, we hadn't been able to get a clear answer about how much whether any expansion had been used. It appeared, our architects were then told that Mr. Adams had come up with some new information that suggested that some of that expansion had been used. So we made the decision at that point to just do renovation within the existing walls, to not try to do anything more than that. We finally found a builder. When he submitted the building permit, was really surprised that it was turned down, and instead, the building permit went in February of 2022. That June, we received a notice of violations with 13 violations. So we felt we had done our due diligence, and that our architect had too.
Yeah, I think it was identified, as I understand it, when the architect met with Nick, which was post-purchase. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When the architect and Nick got down and started comparing square footage numbers, that's when all these things jumped out, yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Helpful. Okay. I think we're ready to move on. We got some other things we got to do tonight. Yeah, but thank you for coming in.
Okay.
Appreciate that, and I assume you'll work with the manager on the next steps. Okay, so we've got two other business items, our council goals and our budget workshop. We also have an executive session. As I said before, I was going to recommend that we take the executive session out of order and do that now. I don't think it'll take, I'm guessing it may take a half hour, maybe less, maybe more, but that's my estimate. And it's only, I think, the real estate matter that we need to deal with, not the personnel matter.
It's a legal matter, sorry, not a real estate matter.
Oh, right.
Real estate is noticed
Right, I have an
on the
old-
agenda. It should
be a
the
legal
motion
matter.
should be legal, which I'll give you the
Give me
letter.
the reference for, okay.
30 seconds.
So I'll ask for a motion to take that out of order.
Do we have a notice problem by not having a correct notice for the public or for the parties that, no, okay.
No, you can make any motion without it being on the agenda as long as, you can do anything you want as long as your meeting is noticed prior. You could put a motion that never saw the agenda legally. It's not great. I mean, you want to let the public know what you're doing.
That's why,
The public knows that you're going into non-public, so I think you're fine.
You come back in half an hour or so, or we'll call you.
We'll call you, yep.
I shouldn't be premature. So I would ask that the council moves to take up item number 4823 out of order and discuss it now before the last two other business items.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Daniele. All in favor? Okay. So given that, I would move to consider action relative to an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA section
E is the last letter.
4056E pertaining to
456E, a legal consultation between the board and its attorneys.
between the board and its attorneys. We need to do roll call vote on this. Counselor Egan? Sorry, I thought you were going away. Just voting on going into executive session.
No.
No, we voted to take the agenda item out of order. So, yes.
Second and yes.
Yeah, thank you, Jake.
Yes.
Seconded by Counselor Daniele, and all of the counselors have voted yes. So we're in executive session with our attorney.
Okay.
And we've also invited our soon-to-be interim town manager into the executive session. I assume everybody
I mean, you know.
Well, we have a question.
That's how you get it out, is you.
We're live, right? We don't need to vote to come out of executive session, right? We just say we're out.
Yeah, let's have the vote now. So,
Okay, I thought we can't, well, I'll ask you about it later.
you have to motion and exit when the door's open. And you're back.
Okay.
Full strength.
I move we come out of executive session.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. All in favor, coming out of executive session? We did a roll call vote, I think, and each of you voted yes. So we're out of executive session at 9:30.
Great.
And we have two things left, goals and capital workshop budget. And our question
Recording in progress.
for you is for the capital budget workshop. What do we need to do tonight, if anything? Or was it just our time to ask questions?
You have nothing formal that you need to do tonight. Your next meeting, April 4th, is the public hearing. But this was just if there were further questions, clarification, or thoughts to kind of direct with any of the changes that you've been informed of or have wanted, to.
And we can also do that next meeting
You
as
can
well.
also do it after the public hearing.
Sounds like Daryl has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to wait? Okay.
Well, I don't, so I should wait to hear this one.
Oh, God. I was working on the operating budget. You're good.
I have three quick things. Number one, the fire department, the AV, the $30,000. In my opinion, that could be funded through the donations that come to the fire department, and maybe if he approached the fire company, that might be taken care of. So I would suggest that to be taken out. The other quick one, the two quick ones, was one at Public Works. I met with Earl the other day, and we brainstormed a little bit, and I think he's coming up with a different idea that may save some money and come up with a different approach. So maybe we can see where that ends up. So I'm all ready for that. And
You're talking in regards to the expansion?
so Earl can bring you up to date, and I don't want to take a lot of time tonight, but I think he'll explain that. And fire rescue, what was the other? I lost it now, but those, I had one more, maybe come back, but.
Sure.
No, it came to me. I really am interested on the savings of eliminating brick sidewalks. My understanding of the cost to construct brick sidewalks, the maintenance of brick sidewalks, the fact they freeze quicker, and it takes more product down to remove ice from brick sidewalks. I'm thinking we'd be better off to do some of those with hot tops, so.
Yep, I do know that Adam and I actually talked about that today. He is working on that analysis for you.
Thank you.
I believe he intends to have it ready for the next meeting. One point I will make it, and I know this is separate from the issues you just brought up, but the appropriation that's in there is to replace existing bricks, and not like, it's not like we remove every brick on that footage, right, that's presented in the plan. It's replacing where there are upheavals, broken bricks, or, things that need to be recompacted. It's not a full replacement analysis with it. It's fixing what's there. So not to say that paving is not going to be a cheaper option, but all the brick there would come out and paving would go down, which is its own cost. I didn't want everybody to think that it's 4,500 square feet of all new brick. You know what I mean? It's replacing.
500 square feet of new brick and 1,000 square feet of relayed brick, and the rest of it stays.
Right, right. So I just wanted to clarify that point, because I didn't want you to think that we're taking, when we bring sidewalk improvements before you, that we're converting everything to brick, or that everything comes out and gets relayed.
I understand that, but also by hot topping, we wouldn't have to do the re-pointing.
That is a very good point, and again, that's exactly what Adam and I talked about. I wanted it more on the public record. I knew you would know, but I wanted it more just on the public record that, that's what that appropriation is for versus a full fix of all brick.
Councilor Egan.
Jessica, we had a question earlier about cemetery reserve accounts, and where are those listed are they part of capital reserves that are attached to the capital budget, or is it a separate?
No, they are in their own reserve and held separately from, what you have in front of you is literally just the
Just the capital.
capital. Yep,
Okay.
just the capital reserves. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're held with the same institution, but within their own, they have their own account because the parameters of investment are different than the capital reserve investments.
Do we have any other questions for Jessica tonight? Knowing that we can ask her more questions 2 weeks from now.
Extraordinary work to get all of this done. I really appreciate the clarity and the crispness of how it's presented. Thank you.
No problem.
And I'll add to that, kudos for a lot of fast-moving, last-minute requests coming out of our downtown that I think you managed to get in there. So I appreciate that. And I will do my best to kind of go through and make some notes and questions. It's probably a good idea for us all to do that. If we have questions, we can ask Jessica a bunch of questions before next Tuesday, or 2 Tuesdays from now, if we want to get clarity on stuff that we, to save time at the meeting. If you want to ask it in public, that's fine too, but if you do have questions, it'd be a good time to do it. So I think in the spirit of what we've just kind of sat through, we were looking to say maybe we don't need to spend much time on a workshop tonight and let you go
Sure.
home a little early and ask
I
questions.
would just like to take 2 seconds to point out that the version you have in front of you is updated based off of the last meeting. So it includes, I believe, possibly the last page in that packet gives you the list of proposed changes. And those are the ones that were discussed at the last meeting. So your individual sheets throughout now will reflect the majority of those changes that were talked about. So just wanted to point that out. And Daryl, the 30,000 for the audio visual,
Yeah, it's in-
I have been talking with Chief on that anyway, and I think we're going to be able to talk with the cable director and see what other viable options there may be, as well as alternate sources of funding potentially. So
Translation, it's going to cost a lot less than $30,000.
that's what we're going to start with. You know, if we find that what the true need of the department and the intent of the room is that it might need more, it would be a subsequent appropriation for a
Thank you.
future consideration. But that's all I wanted to point out, so.
Something much closer to this number than
Yeah, I think after talking, we realized that 25,000 wouldn't cover it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jessica, for calling attention to that last page, because that's helpful to note the changes, which answers a couple of the questions that I had coming into tonight, so perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Which leaves us just with goals, which I think.
Yeah, you can relay to Adam, too, that I'm going to do some research on the EV charger for the town hall improvements out here. There's grant money available. I'm going to see if we can muster something together to get a level 3 charger instead of level 2.
Okay. I will let him know.
Yeah, I sent him an email, and he said, I'll take any help I can get, so.
And you should talk with Volley.
Volley,
We
yeah.
met with a couple different installers about, or met with one, and there's been another one that's contacted us about that, so.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to email it, but you should have a printed copy of our council goals.
Do we hand them out, or do they all sitting here in front of me?
Looks like everybody has one. So what I did is I tried to take notes when we were at our retreat in the library, and then I tried to distill them down into goals using the formats that we used in the past. No, I didn't. I took that. I asked you to do the other thing for,
Okay.
that we don't need to do anymore. So the top is some guidelines, which are just what they say. They're guidelines for us to think about as we make decisions, and then the bottom 5 items are more things that we want to do this year. And there's a little bit of art to whether you put one on the top or the bottom. But take a read through and let me know what you think. It's the quietest this group has ever been, except for you.
Just talk for 3 minutes.
Bring something.
What are you talking about?
Dan said we're way too quiet, and I said, you haven't spoken for 3 minutes.
We were off camera, so
I
it
know.
wasn't an attempt to.
I did email these out. Yeah, I did email them yesterday, yeah.
I was saying he did email us.
Yeah. It's the same thing I emailed last night. I forgot I emailed it to you guys last night. Any comments on what's here?
I've got one.
Yeah.
So in the first, in item 1 at the top,
Yeah.
I think it reads well, but I think one thing that might be missing and is the stewardship and safeguarding and sort of management of our funds, right? So we talk about evaluating control expenditures and operating capital budgets, but there's another side of it, is managing the revenue side of it, and managing, actively and appropriately managing the held resources of the town. I think it might just be a good point to put in there, because as we've talked about previously, and we heard, comment from the public tonight, I think there's still work for us to be done on periodic review and explanation as to how we're managing those saved resources and what the expectation is of them and what's a reasonable way to manage them in periodic review of it. So that's a lot to put in there, but I think maybe adding a little bit.
Give it a shot, yeah. Can I add something like assets and reserves?
Yeah.
Because the assets also might include things like buildings that we need to maintain
Sure.
stewardship of. Okay.
I think it's great.
Okay. I can add a sentence to, and I think you're right, it can go as part of item number 1, I think. Anything else?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, how are we going to measure our goals that we've achieved them?
Great question.
I think they're fine, but how do we measure them? I mean, that's what a goal really is. Here's what we're trying to achieve. How do we know we've achieved it?
Yeah, yeah. I when I started the whole process, I'd like to do something much bigger, much more ambitious, where we have objectives, we have goals, we have sub-objectives with metrics. I couldn't get there.
No, I understand that, but
Yeah.
just, maybe a one-line thing, this will be, how do we,
Yeah.
communicate more, right? Decrease the amount of times we hear, how come I'm blindsided by this? Right?
I'm open to any metrics you guys want to suggest, because I agree with you.
And in 2,
Yep.
is the prioritization of attendance at town council and assigned committee meetings intended to refer to counselors? Or the community?
No, I think that was intended for counselors. That was a holdover from a prior year. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, that's how I read it, was for counselors. I didn't add that. That was from last year.
Well, if it says assigned committee meetings, we don't assign committee meetings to the public, so
Right.
I don't
Right.
remember
The
when that,
council will prioritize attendance at town council and assigned committee meetings, yeah.
I don't remember when that got in there, but a couple of years ago.
At least, yeah. Yeah, we did not have goals last year, so this would have been from 2021. And number 1, I think, was largely from 2021 as well. As was 3, I think 4 I tweaked a bit more. Darren?
I kind of think we've, on 2, between the visioning, between all the extra meetings and everything, we've kind of reached some goals that we didn't do in 21. I'm thinking the open, on our communications, on doing town business, I really think we've opened up, and we've done a fairly good job, and maybe take some different credits, on those. I'm not sure how much more, we can do or whatever.
So you're saying we should take some of this out?
Well, yeah, because I think maybe we have, I think the downtown visioning is a wonderful example of how the community was engaged, how ideas have been brought forward and everything. I'm not sure, but I think we are accomplishing some of the things we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. How about number 3, instead of, we'll support implementation of downtown vision, we're already doing that, but how about increase multi-use housing and mixed-use development in downtown Freeport? I mean, that's a goal, and that's one that's measurable. We're already supporting the downtown visioning, and that's more of a guideline, if we're just going to say that. But increase multifamily use housing and mixed-use development in downtown Freeport, that's a goal.
Yeah, we can't increase it, we can only support increasing it, because we're not building the housing, you know?
Well, okay, but
I see your point, yeah.
We want to increase it. How do we do that? We make the rules that
Make it a more active
increase it.
statement, yep.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
So maybe like strike the first part before the comma,
Yeah.
and then say, just start with the word support. Support multifamily housing and mixed-use development?
I would even say increase it, because we're not going to build it, but we can make the path for people to build it. That's our goal in this thing. Or make it easier to build.
Well, I think by our
Or-
actions, we would do that. So we're saying we're going to support it, and those actions may help us accomplish the goal, right?
Okay. I'm just trying to make it a goal.
Support increasing multifamily housing, okay. Support the increase of multifamily housing. Okay. Anything else?
I have a little bit of problem with cutting it out, implementation of the downtown vision plan. I mean, that's something we've been.
Move it to number 5, make it number 5 at the
Make it a
top,
separate
because
one.
that's a guideline.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Support, support the implementation of downtown vision plan.
That's an active goal from my perspective. I mean, that's something we decide 15, we're going to go to 16, 17, 18, 19, and we are committed to continuing that action. That's what I meant by, I thought that meant. But we haven't stopped, we're sort of first step into the plan.
Okay, but within the plan, there's this, and
There's
this.
a number of them, but staying focused on that plan, which we've worked so hard and paid so much for, seems to me is a priority goal.
Okay, then how about implement our
Yeah, I was
downtown
just gonna
vision
say,
plan?
yeah.
Okay. Well,
Do you want to make them separate? So I'll create one for implement the downtown vision plan and a separate one for support the increase of multifamily housing.
That sounds good.
Okay. So keep this part
I
in.
wasn't trying to knock it out, I was just trying to make it more of a,
Yeah, make it more actionable. Okay. So we'll have 6 goals in the end. Fair enough?
I won't say anything else. Oh, Peter. Where are you going anyway?
It's not going to be this level of entertainment, that's for sure.
You don't never know.
You guys together.
then the number 4,
Jake's the
right?
microphone master over there. MC.
Number 4, you could take out everything that kind of encourage participation in town boards and committees and say, will review policies that can make service to the town more attractive to a wider audience. I mean,
In order to encourage more participation?
there you go.
Just flip it around.
Yeah, change it around a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it more definitive instead of a,
Yeah, I like it. It's more actionable, yeah.
and 1 and 5 kind of seem the same.
1 and 5. More. Yeah, 1 was more about communicating with residents, and 5 was more about following up with stuff. Because I've heard that was one of our issues, that we thought things get dropped. So I could drop communicate openly, we'll diligently follow up on all approved actions.
Yeah, that's good.
Just to make it clear. So we'll diligently follow up on all approved actions. Well, I put that in there because I didn't want it, there was a comment about, sometimes it's just Dan and John and Peter going off in a room and doing stuff, and we're not communicating, so that's why I had to communicate openly, but I can try and...
Yeah, it was just communicating, yeah. Openly is implied.
Yeah, and communicate with the full council.
Yeah. That's good, communicate with the full council. But you have the council will communicate with the council, or you're talking leadership will communicate with the council.
Oh, yeah, good point.
council members together with the town manager, we'll go and follow up and.
Okay, I'll wordsmith it. I'll come back. I know what you guys are thinking. Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So unless there's anything else, yeah, Daryl.
Just one quick thing on, I'm sorry, on number 2, we've specified natural resources. Shouldn't we do all of our resources?
Like what else do you have in mind?
Our infrastructures, our roads, I look at all the resources the town have that we really have got to have that priority to, and I think we do that, but this, is very specific on one. I'd rather maybe have it more inclusive.
Yeah, so I was going to add to item 1 at the top of the page, the guideline, extending what Matt had said, instead of just taking care of our savings and reserves, to say all of our town assets.
So
and
maybe
savings
that's
and
like
reserves.
kind of the same theme with all of our assets, including natural.
Yeah, I put that in because that was something that came up a bunch of times when we were at the libraries. People made it a point to say natural reserves, the river, the forest, the trails.
Good.
All right. So I'll tweak, I'll come back next time, and you guys can tell me if it's good enough to approve at our next meeting.
Okay.
Anything else for tonight?
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do we have a workshop next week?
We do have a workshop on the 28th next week with, I assume, more boards and committees. I don't know who's left, but
Yeah,
yes,
no, there were a few that didn't make it last time.
because we haven't done planning yet.
So.
Coastal Waters missed their appointment last time, so they may be there. So planning, Coastal Waters, maybe others.
Isn't housing going to be there too?
Housing. Oh, do you guys want to try and do a Zoom? Because we liked that when we did our last workshop. Thank you for reminding me. Zoom? Can we do our workshop over Zoom?
Let's look at that. If we can, we'll absolutely.
If we can, we will, yeah.
I'll try, but.
Hopefully no snowstorms.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't we do it 2 weeks ago with a snowstorm?
We did, that's why we did it,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, so even if there's a snowstorm.
Yeah, and there's no action being
Yeah.
taken. It's
Well, Daryl might be out plowing, but,
Exactly.
yeah.
Be a warm spell.
it's a snowstorm.
All right.
Zoom meeting. It's a snowstorm.
Anybody want to,
Sorry, keep going.
well, I was going to end
End
it.
it.
Yeah, does anybody want to go home?
Yeah, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Good motion. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Daniele. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Use the gavel.
Where is that? Their policy.
For much longer.